Today, we're diving into one of the most raw and emotionally intense passages in all of the prophetic books, Jeremiah chapter 15. Seriously, this isn't just about prophecy. It's like we're getting a window straight into the soul of a prophet who's been pushed to his absolute breaking point, and God's powerful response to that crisis. And we start right here, in verse 10, with this cry of pure agony. I mean, this isn't just Jeremiah having a bad day. He is questioning his very existence, all because of the mission he's been given. This one verse just sets the stage for everything that's about to unfold. So first up, let's really zoom in on this personal suffering and God's immediate answer to Jeremiah's cry. There's a really important detail here in verse 10. Jeremiah isn't just regretting being born, he's lamenting his job, his vocation. He calls himself a man of strife, but then he immediately points out that he hasn't wronged anyone. He hasn't lent or borrowed money. He's basically screaming, "I've done nothing to deserve this. My only crime is being faithful to your message, and for that, everyone curses me." It's such a powerful statement about how speaking the truth, even God's truth, can lead to complete and total social rejection. And God's response in verse 11 is so personal. He doesn't just dismiss Jeremiah's pain. He gives him this incredible assurance. He promises him that his future is secure, and get this, that his enemies will actually come to him for help. And this wasn't just some vague comfort. No, this was a specific prophecy that was literally fulfilled when the Babylonians conquered Jerusalem, and their captains specifically sought out Jeremiah to make sure he was safe. All right, so now the camera kind of pulls back. We pivot from Jeremiah's personal crisis to the unstoppable national judgment that is the source of all his pain in the first place. In verse 12, God asks this powerful rhetorical question. Can ordinary iron break super-hardened northern iron and steel? I mean, the answer is obvious, right? No way. It's a metaphor for complete and utter futility. So, what's the northern iron? It's Babylon. God is making it crystal clear here. Judah, you are weakened by your sin and you cannot possibly resist this invasion. And here's the crucial part. The reason resistance is useless is because God himself has empowered Babylon to be his instrument of judgment. And as you can see from this timeline, this was no empty threat. Jeremiah starts his prophecies around 609 BC. By 597, Babylon had already come in and plundered the city once. And then in 586 BC came the final devastating blow, the destruction and the exile. It all unfolded exactly as he had foretold. Verse 13 gets even more specific. All the wealth of the nation, we're talking the temple treasures, the royal storehouses, everything, it will all be handed over as plunder, without price. Now that phrase is key. This wasn't a business deal, this was a consequence. Their economic ruin was a visible, tangible sign that they had broken their covenant with God. Now, after establishing the absolute certainty of that judgment, the focus snaps right back to Jeremiah's internal world. And this is where the weight of his mission pushes him into a really profound crisis of faith. In his prayer in verse 15, Jeremiah pleads, "For thy sake I have suffered rebuke." See, this isn't about him wanting selfish revenge. He's asking for vindication not for his own ego, but to uphold the honor of the God that he represents. It's a huge distinction. And this is just one of the most beautiful and intimate verses in all of prophetic literature. To eat God's words, as he says in verse 16, what does that even mean? Well, it means to completely internalize them, to make them a part of your very being. And notice the incredible paradox here. The very same words that are causing him so much external suffering are the source of his internal joy. Verse 17 paints this stark picture of what that actually looked like. His calling completely isolated him. He couldn't go hang out with the mockers or join in the parties. He just sat alone, filled with God's indignation. And that made him a total outsider in a society that was desperately clinging to false optimism. But that joy he just mentioned, it's now completely overwhelmed. By verse 18, his anguish just boils over. He feels like his pain is this wound that will never, ever heal. This is the prophet at his breaking point. And here it is, the climax of his despair. He asks God if he will be like a deceptive desert stream. The kind that promises water from a distance but is completely bone dry when you finally get there, dying of thirst. It's just a shocking, raw moment where he's basically asking, God, are you even reliable? What happens next is just incredible. God doesn't strike him down for this doubt. Instead, he meets Jeremiah right there in his crisis and offers him a path back. This is the chapter's dramatic turn, a divine recommissioning. God's instructions in verse 19 are crystal clear. First, if thou return, which means get back to my perspective. Second, take forth the precious from the vile, meaning separate my divine truth from your worthless doubts. And if Jeremiah does this, God promises he will once again be as my mouth. The point is, Jeremiah must not bend to the people. They must bend to God's word through him. Then comes this incredible promise in verse 20. I will make thee a fenced brazen wall. Now, bronze, or brass, was the strongest metal they had. God is promising to make Jeremiah an unbreakable, fortified fortress against all his opposition. But here's the crucial part. God doesn't promise to remove the conflict. Oh no, the people are still going to fight against him. The promise isn't the absence of a battle, it's the absolute certainty of the outcome. They will attack, but they will not prevail. And verse 21 just seals the deal with this final, definitive declaration. I will deliver thee out of the hand of the wicked, and I will redeem thee out of the hand of the terrible. It is a rock-solid, ironclad guarantee of his personal salvation, even as the entire nation is collapsing around him. And you know what? Just like the judgment came true, so did this personal promise. When Jerusalem finally fell in 586 BC, the leaders who had opposed Jeremiah were either killed or deported. But Jeremiah, the one who spoke the unpopular truth, was personally sought out by the conquering Babylonian army and set free. God kept his word, down to the letter. So we're left with this thought. I mean, this text is thousands of years old, but the experience is timeless, isn't it? It suggests that maybe true faith isn't the absence of doubt or pain. Maybe, just maybe, it's having the courage to cry out in our despair and the willingness to listen for that voice that calls us to stand back up, even when it feels like our world is falling apart.